All right, Susan, the Biden-Trump matchup showed us just how much a debate can affect a campaign. Tell us, what is at stake tomorrow night? I'm so excited, I'm tongue-tied.
You're excited. I don't know, Steph. I have a little bit of dread going into this. I've watched Donald Trump in a lot of presidential debates, and many of them will go down in history as some of the toughest political dialogue ever to watch, really, since television started airing these things. Donald Trump is a blizzard of misinformation and lies when he speaks in these debates. He has a history of certainly talking very aggressively over his opponents. I don't know if the rules will allow that or not this time. The stakes are incredibly high here. We've already crossed the threshold of the most impactful, and I know people hate it when you use that as a word, but the most impactful debate ever, in the sense that the first debate caused Joe Biden indirectly to have to drop out of the race. But I still think this one could be one of the most significant presidential debates of our lifetime. Aside from that one, there are so many questions still about Harris, incredible pressure on her, and Donald Trump. I mean, look, anything is possible.
Yamiche, the reason these two have never met in person is because Donald Trump did not accept a peaceful transfer of power. It's because Donald Trump, when he was president of the United States, chose not to work with the Senate. So tomorrow night, Democrats are going to get what they have been waiting for since she became the nominee. She will have the opportunity to prosecute the case against him on stage next to him and show America who she is. Is that her plan?
Her plan is certainly to show America who she is. And I've been talking to a lot of sources who are familiar with her debate preparations. And her mission is definitely to lay out what her vision for America is. And by doing that, it's really to also tell Americans who she is. There are a lot of Americans who are still not totally really understanding her background. So she really wants to go and give a biography, talking about her mother, talking about her middle class background. But she also wants to lay out her policy stances and give voters, including undecided voters, independents, who are going to be watching this very closely. She wants to give them specific things that she's going to do if a Harris administration happens. So that's why we've seen some policy rollouts, and she put a policy page up on her website today, really laying out a number of issues and stances. But she also wants to go and needle Donald Trump. She also really wants to go and get under his skin, and really her advisors and her team want Donald Trump to really go full Donald Trump. And what they mean by that is they want him to lash out. They want him to go personal on her. They want him to say all the things that are derogatory and maybe in their minds even racist, their language, not mine, about her. So American people can really see him at his fullest. But they also want to make sure that she remains calm and doesn't get pulled into those personal attacks. They really want her to still be focused on everyday Americans and how their lives are going to be bettered by her administration, while also trying to, in some ways, bait Donald Trump into making a mistake.
Hugo, you reported that Trump's team is worried about which Donald is going to show up on the debate stage tomorrow night. But here's the thing. Whether it's naughty Donald, good Donald, child Donald, fired up Donald, his supporters stick with him no matter what. So why does his debate performance even matter to them? If it's disastrous, they'll rationalize it.
Look, I think there's several things going on here. I think certainly the Trump campaign has looked at the Biden debate as the model that Trump should follow. And, in their eyes, the way they see that is, that was happy Trump. That was good Trump. That was Trump who was fast on his feet and, had little quips and could interject about golf, and it made him look more personable. And on the flip side, if you get angry Trump, that's the real concern, where he starts making ad hominem remarks. That's when he, starts making remarks about Kamala Harris's kind of race and gender, and those are the areas that they really don't want to get into, because it puts off even his own supporters. Anecdotally, if you travel down to Palm Beach and kind of you quiz even the Uber driver who tend to be Trump supporters about what Trump should do, they always say, this man talks too much, and when he talks too much and gets riled up and frustrated, he shoots himself in the foot, and it's painful to watch. And if it's painful to watch for Trump supporters, it's going to be excruciating for undecided voters, for independents, and for kind of people who genuinely maybe they don't like Kamala Harris's policies, but they also feel put off by Trump. And that is the sliver of the electorate, right, that the Trump campaign needs as part of their coalition to win this thing. And I think that's the major concern is if he can turn off even Trump supporters, think of what it can do to independents.
Susan, at this point, it's like we already know everything there is to know about Donald Trump. So does that make it that much more of an opportunity or a risk for Kamala Harris, who a lot of people in this country don't know yet?
Well, that's right, Steph. I do think that, for Harris, it's about crossing the threshold to being the acceptable alternative to Trump. There's a strong sense that there is, in fact, a durable anti-Trump, non-Trump majority in this country. He lost the popular vote not once but twice. There's no indication in surveys that he has gained enormously new followers in the subsequent 4 years. Many people would say it's remarkable, given everything that's happened, that Trump has held on to his support, but he certainly has not built it up into a considerable majority of the country. In fact, he's the only president in American history since polling began never to have support of 50% of the country for at least one day of his presidency. So, there is this ceiling for Donald Trump. So for Harris, the trick is to make the election a referendum on Trump and reminding people why they didn't want him in the first place, while also crossing the barrier, I think, for people to be acceptable enough as the alternative. And that's where I think she's a particularly difficult job in the debate tomorrow, because if she just prosecutes the case against Donald Trump, perhaps she won't have done enough to really introduce herself to independent voters or even Biden 2020 voters who, are inclined to vote for her, but might not feel comfortable enough yet that they know enough about her.
I don't know if debate prep will actually matter. Both of them are very skilled debaters. Yamiche, I want to go back to what Hugo was just saying, how Trump's team, they're hoping they get the Trump that showed up for the Biden debate. But here's the thing. Even if that Donald Trump shows up, he didn't do anything exceptional that night. It was Joe Biden who single-handedly lost. If he faces off against Kamala Harris as the same Trump he was 2 months ago on the debate stage, that might not mean a win for him.
Certainly. And I was just talking to a Harris aide who said, while President Biden might have had one of the worst presidential debate performances in history, someone who came in very close second was Donald Trump on that stage. And they believe that Donald Trump showed himself to be someone who was lying profusely, someone who was stumbling, who was mumbling, who did not have a handle on information. That's the type of Donald Trump that Vice President Harris is hoping shows up tomorrow night. And she wants to make sure that people see that, which is part of the reason why there was this back and forth about muted mics, because the Harris campaign stance is that they really want people to see Donald Trump saying the mumbling and saying all of the things that he might say under his breath, including even cursing at her and using derogatory language. So they don't think that Donald Trump had a good debate in June when, of course, he debated President Biden. So they're really hoping that if he is that same Donald Trump, that they'll be able to use his flaws against him, while at the same time, as you said, she does still want to really make sure that people walk away from this debate not just thinking, oh, she beat up Donald Trump and she really did attack him and landed a bunch of punches. She needs to also come away feeling like there are people, especially those independent voters, who say, I have a clear vision of what a Harris administration would look like. I have a clear vision of why she's not Donald Trump. I also have a clear vision, frankly, of also why she's not a third term of Biden, because I've been talking to some Harris campaign aides and other people that are familiar with debate preparations who have been telling me that there is this sort of real debate going on about how she differentiates herself from President Biden. She is loyal to him. She definitely supports him, supports a lot of his policies because, of course, she's a sitting vice president. But she does differentiate her. She needs to differentiate herself. And she does have some different views, including on the capital gains and some tax policy that she rolled out last week. So it's going to be very interesting for me to see what else she does to try to differentiate herself, because we can expect that we're going to see President Trump do something like try to lay blame for the withdrawal and the chaos that happened after the Afghanistan withdrawal and a number of other policies that the Biden administration has pulled out. But she is the vice president, so it's going to be very hard for her to do that. But I'm very interested to see how she says, yes, I am serving at the sort of pleasure of the president, but I also have my own views, and here's what they are.